Before Gregory, my life was measured in sound. The mournful sigh of the cello under my bow, the disciplined cadence of a metronome, the roar of applause from a darkened hall. Music was my language, the way I made sense of the world. Now my life was measured in silence. The funereal tick of the grandfather clock in the foyer, the whisper of the climate control system, the vast echoing quiet of a 40-acre estate that had become my gilded cage. I had made a bargain a decade ago, trading the uncertain passion of a musician's life for the formidable security of being Gregory's wife. He saw my past not as a career I'd abandoned, but as a charming hobby I had outgrown like a childhood doll collection. He had given me everything a woman was supposed to want: this sprawling house, a limitless credit card, a place in society. In return, I had become an elegant ghost drifting through rooms I didn't feel I owned my own vibrant sounds, replaced by the crushing weight of perfect, opulent silence. That silence was most profound when it was just me and Caleb. Caleb was Gregory's son, 21 years old and a fallen god. 6 months ago, he had been a collegiate swimming champion, a being of fluid grace and explosive power, his identity forged in the chlorine-scented crucible of competition. Then came a catastrophic injury during a training exercise, a torn hamstring so severe it had required surgery pins and a grueling, uncertain prognosis. The demigod had been cast out of his pantheon, stripped of his power, and sent home to my silent mansion to heal. He wasn't just healing, he was simmering. The injury had left him with a coiled, furious energy, the caged rage of a predator who could no longer hunt. He prowled the long hallways of the house with a pronounced limp, his once perfect physique now marred by a subtle asymmetry, a constant reminder of his body's betrayal. His presence was a discordant note in the house's sterile harmony, and I found myself drawn to his raw, untamed pain. It was the only real thing in this house, the only thing that felt alive. The storm that had been gathering in him finally broke on a Tuesday afternoon. Gregory was in Zurich, of course. The house was mine to haunt. I was in the library staring blankly at a page of some unread novel when I heard it. A sharp, guttural cry of frustration from the West Wing, where the master suite connected to a state-of-the-art home gym and sauna. It wasn't a sound of simple pain. It was the sound of failure, a raw, ragged edge of despair. My heart gave a strange, painful lurch. It was the call of something broken, and my own broken parts resonated in response. I told myself it was concern the duty of a stepmother, but I knew deep down it was a moth-like pull towards the only flame in my cold, dark world. I followed the sound. The door to the gym was ajar. The air that seeped out was thick with the medicinal scent of liniment and the salt tang of sweat. Peering inside, I saw him. He was standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by chrome machines that mocked him with their silent potential. He wore only a pair of gym shorts. His body, still magnificent, was slick with perspiration. On the floor beside him was a resistance band, snapped and useless. He had been trying to do one of his rehab exercises. He had failed. He slammed his fist into his thigh right above the long, puckered scar that traversed his hamstring. Useless, he growled to himself, his voice thick with self-loathing. He didn't know I was there. He was locked in a private hell, and I had just found the key. "Caleb," I said, my voice cutting through the humid air. He spun around his face a thunderous mask of rage and shame. For a moment I thought he would scream at me, order me out. But when he saw me, the anger in his eyes faltered, replaced by a sudden, stark vulnerability. It was like watching a fortress wall crumble, revealing the terrified soldier within. "I'm fine," he lied, his jaw tight. He snatched a towel from a nearby bench and threw it over his shoulder, a futile attempt to hide his body, to hide the evidence of his failure. "No, you're not." I said softly, stepping fully into the room and letting the door click shut behind me. The sound sealed us in creating a pocket universe of steam, sweat, and secrets. I heard you. What happened? The band snapped, he grumbled, refusing to meet my eyes. It's nothing. It wasn't the band that I heard, I pressed gently. It was you. Talk to me. He began to pace, his limp more pronounced with his agitation. What's there to talk about? You see this? He gestured angrily at his leg. It's ruined. 6 months of this and I'm weaker than when I started. The doctors say, be patient. What do they know? They didn't build their entire life on being fast, on being strong. They don't know what it's like to have your own body turn on you. I watched him, letting him vent his rage. I had to peel back the anger to get to the real wound, the one festering beneath. This isn't just about the swimming, is it? He stopped pacing and stared at me, his chest heaving. It's about everything, he confessed, his voice dropping to a raw, broken whisper. If I'm not that guy anymore, the swimmer, the athlete, then who am I? What good am I? He finally looked at me, and his eyes were filled with a fear so profound it made my own breath catch. Izzy, he said, using a nickname no one had used in years, a relic from a time when I was more than just Gregory's wife. What happens when I'm with someone, a girl, and my body just quits? What if the pain comes back? What if I can't perform this injury? It didn't just take my leg. I think it took everything. There it was, the true terrified heart of the matter. It wasn't about the Olympics or championship titles. It was a primal fear of inadequacy, a crisis of identity that had convinced him his masculinity was as damaged as his muscle fibers. He believed his one great asset, his potent, celebrated physicality, was gone forever. A strange calm settled over me. I finally understood his pain. It was a mirror to my own. He felt his body had betrayed him just as I felt my soul had betrayed me. He felt useless as a man. I felt useless as a human being. In that moment, he wasn't my husband's son. He was my counterpart, my fellow ghost. Your body hasn't turned on you, Caleb. I said, my voice low and certain. It's hurt, and hurt things need to be healed, not punished. I walked toward him, my steps measured and deliberate. The doctors can mend the muscle, but the fear, that's different. That's a phantom pain. And you can't fight a phantom with anger. You have to teach it that it's not real. He watched me, his expression wary but desperate. He was ready to believe anything I told him. Sometimes I continued, stopping just before him. The body forgets how to feel anything but pain. It needs to be reminded of its other languages: pressure, warmth, pleasure. My gaze dropped to the angry scar on his leg. You've been treating this like an enemy. Let's try treating it like a part of you that needs to be coaxed back to life. I looked back up at him. Let me help you. Not with the exercises, with the healing. He searched my face looking for something, a trick, a trap. But all he found was a placid, understanding sincerity that I summoned from the depths of my own loneliness. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. It was a gesture of complete and total surrender. What followed was an act of the most profound and dangerous intimacy. I told myself it was physical therapy. I told myself it was a platonic healing art. It was a lie more elaborate and beautiful than any musical composition I had ever played. I had him lie down on the padded therapy table. We're going to work on the scar tissue, I said, my voice taking on a clinical professional tone, and the surrounding muscles. We need to encourage blood flow and remind the nerves that they can transmit signals other than pain. My hands, which had once known the intricate geography of a cello's fingerboard, now set about learning the terrain of his body. I started with a deep tissue massage, my fingers and palms working the tense knotted muscles of his thigh. I was methodical, applying pressure, feeling for the areas of resistance. The air was filled with the sharp smell of liniment and the soft sounds of his breathing. At first he was rigid, his entire body clenched in anticipation of pain. "Relax," I murmured. "Breathe with me. I'm not going to hurt you." Slowly, agonizingly, he began to let go. I could feel the tension bleeding out of him under my hands. I worked my way up from his calf to his glutes, feeling the intricate network of a finely tuned athletic machine that had fallen into disrepair. My touch was firm, knowledgeable, and entirely focused. But as the minutes stretched into an hour, the nature of that touch began to change. I was no longer just a therapist. The boundary between healer and participant dissolved. My movements became slower, more sensuous. I wasn't just working on his muscles, I was exploring him. My fingers would linger, tracing the edges of the scar, then moving to the unblemished skin nearby, contrasting the textures. I leaned over him, my hair brushing against his shoulder. His breathing had changed. The pained guardedness was gone, replaced by a deep, steady rhythm that was beginning to quicken. I could feel the heat of his skin, a furnace banking under my palms. I felt a tremor run through him, a signal of awakening. "Is this helping?" I whispered, my lips close to his ear. "Yes," he breathed the word, a raw, guttural sound. This was my new music. My hands were the bow, his body was the instrument. I was coaxing a new melody from him, one of forgotten pleasure and nascent desire. The objective clinical act had become a slow, deliberate crescendo of sensation. I was rewriting the composition of the moment, transforming his pain into a prelude for something else entirely. I felt a jolt of pure, unadulterated power. I was no longer a ghost in this house. I was a conductor, a creator, a conduit for life itself. I moved my hands higher, my touch becoming scandalously intimate under the guise of therapy. I was proving his own theory wrong. I was showing him in the most undeniable way possible that his body was not broken. It was very, very much alive. And in awakening him, I was awakening myself. The silence inside me was filled with a roaring, deafening symphony. When I finally pulled away, the room was silent except for our ragged breaths. He didn't move for a long time. Then he slowly sat up, his eyes dazed, his face flushed. He looked at me with a new expression, not of anger or fear, but of awe and dependency. The days that followed were charged with the echo of that afternoon. A new secret language existed between us, spoken in held gazes and loaded silences. The house was no longer quiet to me. It was thrumming with our secret. Caleb's anger was gone, replaced by a watchful, waiting stillness. He was like a disciple who had been shown a miracle and now waited for his Messiah to perform another. We found ourselves in the same room often, as if drawn by an invisible string. One afternoon we stood by the edge of the pool, its turquoise water shimmering under the sun. He couldn't swim in it yet, and we both felt the irony. My official physical therapist says the progress is remarkable, he said, looking at me, his meaning perfectly clear. He doesn't understand it. Maybe he's not using the right technique, I replied softly. His eyes darkened with need. Maybe you could show me again sometime. The technique. It was a request, a plea, and a demand all at once. The dynamic was set. I was his healer. He was my patient. It was a beautiful, twisted lie that we both desperately needed to believe. That night, long after the house had settled into its usual slumber, there was a soft knock on my bedroom door. I knew it was him. Gregory was 1,000 miles away, but I had never felt more like an adulteress. I opened the door. Caleb stood there, a silhouette against the dim hallway light. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His eyes said everything. Heal me. I stepped aside and let him in. As I closed the door, I finally understood the nature of the bargain I had made. Not with Gregory, but with Caleb. I had mistaken his desperation for passion and my own loneliness for a desire to heal. I hadn't cured his pain. I had simply given it a new name and made it my own. In my quest to feel alive, I had tethered myself to his brokenness, and he to mine. We were not a healer and a patient. We were just two ghosts in a silent house, finally finding a way to feel and condemning ourselves to haunt each other forever. The most compelling stories are not about good versus evil, but about the desperate human choices we make in the quiet spaces of our lives. If you are drawn to exploring these morally complex paths, subscribe to the channel and join our community. The human heart is a territory of endless shadow and light, and there are so many more stories to uncover. Now leave a comment and tell me, can a person's attempt to heal someone else become a poison for them both? No one.